And
Yellow.
welcome back, Ops Experts Club. Happy to be here again. Another fine Thursday.
It is Thursday. Wow, it's Thursday.
I
Holy
know
cow.
Thursdays are nice because they're right before Friday.
I love Thursday. I hate Wednesdays. Wednesdays are the worst day of the week. I hate Wednesdays more than Mondays because it's just like you're like every Wednesday comes along, you're like, oh, it's Wednesday.
That's why it's got its own special name. It's Hump Day.
Hump day.
On the
See, I'm a
hump.
glass half full kind of guy, so I'm always like, oh gosh, we still have so far to go.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, good to see you again. Thanks for joining us,
Good to be here.
as you do almost every week. Last week we had a pretty fun conversation with Scott Benham of Scott Benham. Currently been working with Pedro Adao.
Yep.
Helping out with previously with John Maxwell, doing a lot of really cool things there. It was a really cool conversation to have with him. We don't get a lot of product designers and developers in here, so it was really fun to hear his take on things.
Yeah, it was cool. I was able to catch up on the replay of it on our collab Facebook page. And I mean, as long as we've worked with Pedro, I've never really gotten to like sit down and actually chat with Scott. Like it's always like in passing, like, hey, I need this, hey, I need that. And like always like little 3-second conversations. So it was actually nice to hear from him in an extended format, just of like, who he is, where he came from, all of the all of the challenges that he faces inside Pedro Adao organization. It's nice to finally like get in something more than like, hey, can you create a sales page real quick? Okay, bye.
Yeah, that's how a lot of my conversations went with him. But gotten to work with him for quite a few years. It's really fun to know about his educational content he created alongside people, and that's kind of how he got his boost. I've seen that so many people, even if they're buying an online course, they really love that, like hands-on, like where can I take notes? How can I follow along? Like that, just that small deliverable you can give them alongside of this video is leaps and bounds improvement on just a video. You get a lot better success rate with it. More people are likely to complete it, more likely to get the results you require from it. It's really cool to see that he just kind of stepped into that and was like, I'm just going to start designing these.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that I will say the Pedro Adao organization has done really well with. As much of, I mean, they're kind of the forefront leaders when it came to like COVID digital space and digital, or virtual challenges, virtual audiences. They really pushed the needle forward, but they've done a great job of including the virtual space. And I know Scott has a huge hand in that. With that product design, but also like with, whenever they do events, they also send out like swag boxes to the people who can't attend physically. So when you're in the virtual, you still get that hands-on piece that I'm sure he has a huge hand in putting together. It's super smart because, I mean, with COVID in 2020s, when everything was virtual, it was like, how do you get the same interaction from people who are just on a screen? We've talked about it like 1,000 times. It's super easy when we're on Zooms to just like zone out and just pretend like you're just a face on a screen. I don't know that you're actually a real person. I'm not going to interact, but they've done a great job of kind of pulling those virtual people in and getting them to be more than just like faces on screens. And that swag, they did a journal. They've done a good physical product with just about every launch they've done. So he's had a great hand in that.
And I also like to see people focus not as much on, how do we get more sales, but also how do we get the people who have purchased to complete. Like a sale's a sale, but if people aren't doing the work, aren't getting the results from this program, it's just going to die off. People will find out it doesn't really work. But his real focus is like, okay, we've sold them this thing. Doesn't matter if it was $1,000 product or $10,000 product. What do we need to implement to ensure that they complete it and get the success from it that you should get after completing this? And that really speaks a lot to how well they are at bringing more people in. Because if it is successful and people are doing it, then that's going to speak volumes and more people will come in. So it just creates this nice little engine circle of of making sure that not only you're selling, but then you're fulfilling in a way that people are completing, and then they're happy and they're telling other people, and then you're selling.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and it doesn't matter what the business model is, whether it's brick and mortar or online, like every goal of a business should be to create repeat customers.
Hmm.
So, I mean, it's easy in the brick and mortar space. Like you're like, I see you one day, I would love to see you the next day and the day after
Hmm.
that. Like I want you to come back to my business. And the online space, that's completely fulfillment. Like if I purchase from you and the customer service is bad, or the product is not as advertised, or I got the product but it was late, or I really didn't actually gain anything from the product, I'm not going to be a repeat customer. If you sell another course or if you sell another info product, I'm probably not going to buy it because I didn't like the first one to begin with. So if
Hmm.
you can create those repeat customers, then it's just going to help your business, and that's solely like on Scott's hands to like make sure that the fulfillment and the product that's being get in their hands is one that's enough to make somebody go, oh wow, that was really worth the 1K I spent, or the 5K I spent, or 10K I spent, and now I'm going to come back.
Yeah. And that's good you mentioned that, because repeat customers, the whole idea is to have something else they can purchase.
Mhm.
If you are at a coffee shop, obviously it's consumable, so they can just come the next day. If you're a clothing store, they're going to need more clothes, they'll come in again. If you're just selling one course, you're not going to have a repeat customer because you don't have anything else to sell them. So you really need to focus in on, okay, what's the value ladder? What gets them in? What gets them sold next? And it's sold next and sold next. And if you don't have that built out, you're just getting people in. That's it, as a waste, unless you've got some sort of subscription product that you're getting people into. Because I mean, Spotify, they make the most money they ever can out of me. There's nowhere else I can go. I'm not going to join some sort of premium level and get one-on-ones with the CEO of Spotify. Like, but it's a subscription, so I'm paying every month.
Yep.
So as long as they keep me paying, that's an incentive. So
Yep.
really important to make sure you've got that value ladder set up, even if you don't intend to sell it. People always say, like, what's the top thing you would do and for how much? Even if you don't think anybody's ever going to take it, put it out there so that people know there's a highest level possible, just so they know, like,
Yep.
okay, there is an ascension pattern.
Yep. People love a journey. I mean, it's the reason why games will always be as huge as they are in our culture. It's the reason why
Mhm.
people love the hero journey story in movies. Like people love to see and be on a journey. So as a business, you go, here's a journey we have for you. Whether you get there or not is totally up to you, but we've given you something to be able to be in a journey on that immediately excites people, and they go, oh, I want to be a part of that. Or it gives them a goal, that product that you're saying you never think you'd ever sell. There's somebody out there going, I'm going to get to the top of that mountain at some point and I'm going to pay my way up there.
Mhm. Yeah. That's the whole reason why Dexter had 8 seasons and wasn't just one movie.
This is true. This
He
is
was on a
very,
journey.
oh man.
Well, that's fun. I'm going to shift gears a little bit. Something we've been seeing a lot of lately in our clients, Ben. I know you and I are both working in it pretty heavily. And that's the comeback of webinars, believe it or not. Ben, you didn't no idea they were out for a while.
I didn't know they were gone. They were just
They
they
were
were
out.
gone and in so quick.
Yeah, webinars were big, 10 to 5 years ago. Everybody was doing webinars. You can sign up for webinar everywhere you looked. Webinars were happening. And then nobody was signing up for webinars. Nobody was doing webinars. Marketers were saying, stop doing webinars. There's too many webinars. Nobody's showing up for webinars. They're not converting. So people were switching gears. We were having challenges. We were having video sales letter pages. We were having just your classic book a call. Um, Things were switching. But now, in the last year or so, webinars are back.
The back, baby. I mean, it makes sense. Like you empty out a space because it's so like saturated that as
Mhm.
soon as it empties out, somebody goes, hey, wait a minute, nobody's doing this. I'll be the only guy doing it. I'm going to start it back up again.
Yep. That's what they did. They filled it back up, and now we're looking good. I mean, we've got a client running webinars, evergreen webinar,
Mhm.
which Ben will show us a little bit of. It's the ability to make a webinar once, record it, and have it running automatically every week. You got the right integrations, plugins, you got automated emails, everything going. And so people feel like they're going to a webinar that's live. That was pre-recorded. They got an evergreen webinar running every week. They're making a little over $1 million a month just on this one webinar that they recorded once. And now it's just left to the fulfillment team, the customer support team,
Yep.
them to just manage, run. We don't really change much. You can change ads out. Ads do get fatigued. So it's good to update your ads, change your ads, because you can still target the same people if they haven't clicked yet.
Yep.
We're seeing a lot of success in webinars. Fortunately, with webinars comes applications and pricing. Yes. One
Right.
thing I've noticed, we just had somebody sign up for Zoom webinars. And I don't know if you've seen the cost of a Zoom webinar lately, Ben.
I have not. It was free at first, right? I thought it was always free. Or
It was a very cheap add-on. It was like $9.99 a month extra add-on Zoom webinar. Ben, what do you think is a good size audience to have on your webinar?
A good size audience?
Yeah.
If you're trying to sell a product, I would say 500.
All right. $500 Zoom webinar add-on. That's not too much. That's $79 a month.
A month.
A month.
What is it?
What
If you
if-
have 1,000 people on.
1,000 people? Well, Ben, I'm glad you asked, because one would assume 1,000 would be twice as many and twice as much as 500, right? No,
would
you're
think-
now looking at $340 a month,
Oh my God.
right? Let's say you want 3,000 attendees on a webinar. $990 a month.
Holy moly.
Yeah. Yeah.
$1,000
before-
bucks a month just to run a Zoom webinar.
Yeah. Before we take a look at every webinar, I just wanted to look at different webinar alternatives. It's a lot. Zoom webinars are a lot right now.
I mean, you
And-
better be running a lot of 3,000 person webinars to be paying out $1,000 a month, 12 grand a year. Holy moly.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. Zoho. I know we've mentioned Zoho a few times. I'm really impressed with them. They keep coming up more and more as this all-in-one solution. They've got CRMs, they've got invoicing software. I'm pretty sure, Ben, one of our clients uses Zoho, right?
Yep.
Yeah, and they have some pretty beefy features that they're utilizing out of Zoho to connect clients' invoices, two-way invoices, people paying you paying people, a lot of accounting.
Yeah, the thing I love about Zoho, as I'm hearing about it more from them, is it's a pretty good all-in-one. Like their CRM, sales, customer support,
Mhm.
scheduling, phone sales, like they've got it all packaged up, and apparently webinars too. Jeez Louise.
They've got webinars now, $216 for 3,000 attendees.
Yeah, that's a little bit better than Zoom.
Yep, looking good there. So yeah, I'm really excited about Zoho. I'd really love to get a chance to dig in there more. GoToWebinar. I think this one's been around for a while. It's one of the classics. 3,000 participants, $399 a month, billed annually. So probably more if billed monthly, probably $499 if billed monthly.
Wow.
I'll let you cover these ones. A-Event is one we tried using. Newer company, so new that they're more on we're not going to show you pricing. Just schedule a call with us.
Gotcha.
Yeah, just basic webinars, integrations. They're leaning more into the automations, follow-ups, integration side of it, using smart timeline technology.
Yep.
Engaged audience tasks, actions, pretty good stuff like that. So it just goes to show you that what are you getting from Zoom for that extra 3x, 2x cost?
And I mean, really what they're banking on is brand awareness, right? Like when you think virtual meeting, virtual webinar, everybody immediately thinks of Zoom.
Mhm.
And they're hoping that you will only think of Zoom and that you won't go out and try and find another source. Also, they're hoping that, if you've spent so much time within Zoom, especially as an organization, that they've basically needled into every single link that you ever send out so that it makes it difficult to swap away from Zoom. Like if you have to go and swap out all of your Zoom links for new webinar links. Like that's not a simple task if you're a large organization who is putting on 3,000 person webinars. So they really sucked everybody in and then said, hey, we're jacking up the prices.
Yeah, they did.
That's hilarious. Well, if you are, should I go into Webinar?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Show us
So
around.
that is that's the live end, right, of webinars. But what if you want to evergreen it? What would you do? You can't really, you get to send somebody a Zoom replay, but I think the biggest part of webinar and why evergreen webinars are so good is because you can make them seem live. Webinar is a great tool. They are you could probably just pull up their sales page too. Webinar plans and pricing. They are actually on a fairly I will not say cheap, but they're a lot more budget friendly than Zoom. $500 a year can get you an evergreen webinar that's just constantly moving in the background, which is nice. That's just for the webinar section. Now, if you want to do the live side, which is Webinar Jam, it's going to cost you pretty much double that. But if you're looking to do one really good webinar, even if it's like a Zoom webinar, like you pay for like 1 month of that, $1,000 a month for the 3,000 people, you're packed in with 3,000 people, you record it, and then you immediately cancel that $1,000 a month subscription. Like you can use that webinar then to drop into, or that Zoom recording to drop into webinar, and that's just, you use that for on and on and on. No, don't leave, pay us.
You can even start your, the video recording platform you've reviewed in the past. You can just record your webinar without it being a live webinar, pretend like it's live.
Yep.
And put that.
Yep. The cool thing about webinar, if I can get to the right spot, awesome. So when you're configuring a webinar, it's actually super user friendly. What I had up earlier is a quick start guide that you look at. You're like, oh god, it looks like a content, inside a school book. But when you roll through it, it's actually really super user friendly. These are really short sections that give you a lot of good pictures on how to use a previous webinar jam session if you're using their live version too. Or uploading any of your own videos, whatever you've recorded, drop it into as an MP4 here, or upload it to YouTube and you can link it directly there, or your Vimeo. Like everybody uses Vimeo for their recordings, so you can just pull a video from your Vimeo, link it in here, and then boom, you've got your webinar that's running whenever you want it to. Super simple. And here we can configure, like I said, your source video, basic settings around it. The great thing, I should probably cancel first. The great thing about webinar is you can create what's called a just-in-time webinar. Depending on your market, who you're trying to get into your webinars, this is either a great selling point or a bad selling point. So just-in-time webinars are, if I send out an email to my email list and say, hey, we're starting a webinar, sign up whenever you'd like, or maybe you have that link on your social media. Somebody signs up and it says, webinar starting in 15 minutes. And they go, oh, shoot, I made it just in time. And they sign up. But what's actually happening is they're just being shuffled into a recording that starts 15 minutes after them signing up. And they get prompts and reminders saying it's starting soon, starting soon. So you can have this basically run 24/7. And every time somebody signs up, they think they're getting there just in time. Works well if your market is that really emotional, quick thinking, like buy now, buy now, buy now market. If you have a real logical buyer, if you're selling like really in-depth courses, they're going to go, wait a minute, every time I sign up, this webinar is happening in 15 minutes. Something doesn't seem kosher here.
Yeah.
So you can schedule that to be a just in time, or for it to be maybe only at 8 p.m. every Thursday, or only at, on the weekends, whatever you want. You can do either of those. It just depends on who you're trying to market to. You can even block out holidays if you want. People can't sign up on Christmas because why would you be there speaking on Christmas? A lot of cool things you can do inside here. Registration, they make it super simple. What you want your registration page to look like. They come with a bunch of pre-configured templates. And it gets really customizable all the way into, what does your chat look like? You can have messages that as people are on these webinars, these evergreen webinars, and they're chatting in the chat box, it's actually saving those. And every time a new chat comes through, it'll prompt you when you sign in to say, hey, you have 25 new chats from your last evergreen webinar. Review them, and if you like them, click OK, and we'll actually add them to the webinar. So every time somebody comes in, they're seeing new chats from every time that somebody who's run this webinar. It's really cool in that sense, and it makes it feel more engaging, alive, until people kind of catch on that their chat questions aren't being answered by the speaker. So you kind of have to be careful there. It's a little dance you play of, is this real? Is this not real? It's like WWE. Is this fake or is it scripted? Like, what's really going on? And for the most part, people don't really care. Like, it's at the end of the day, if your webinar, what you're presenting is good enough and it gets the point across for your product enough, people are going to kind of forget and not really care about whether it's live or it's not live. And then they get to a sales prompt at the end and they go, you know what, that was really good. I got what I wanted. Even if it was a recording, I still enjoyed it. So I'm going to purchase. And on a lot of these too, even on, let's see, I think live is where I want. You can have a countdown page. So it's, counting down to when it's starting. In the live content section, you can actually drop links to sales pages. So you can have pop-ups with sales links. There's a lot you can do here that really just kind of makes the webinar more interactive if it's evergreen. It has a lot of sales prompts. You're engaging with the chat. All of this is kind of being done by EverWebinar. And like you said, it just takes some management on the back end from customer service and fulfillment to make sure that if people purchase, then they're getting the product they want, or if they have an issue, then they can resolve that fulfillment issue for them. So I like it. It's super, super hands-off, which is nice.
Yeah. And that's really the goal. I mean, if you're doing webinars, you should really be looking at moving into evergreen webinars, because the point of doing something is to, eventually make it scalable, repeatable, feasible. And having to do a live webinar and changing all these automations, sending manual emails, doing all this stuff really takes time. You can get burned out. So if you're able to do it once and then, set up this evergreen, start small with your ads, kind of dial in everything and then just ramp it up. I mean, that really makes it scalable.
Yeah, from there, exactly. Your upfront cost of creating the webinar. I mean, obviously you're paying a team to put together the automations on the back end. You're paying your team to create fulfillment. You've got customer service, like all that's a lot of upfront cost when you first do your webinar. You don't want to pay that upfront cost like every month because you want to do a webinar every month. If you can do that large expenditure upfront, create a great webinar, record it, and then throw it into something like EverWebinar, your upfront costs are gone every time. Then it's just the back end management costs, which are significantly smaller than obviously, if you're putting on an event and you're having to build a stage and create graphics and all that to do a great webinar, like doing that every time is expensive. Unless you're a live event company who's, what you do is you put on cool events. If you want just a webinar, like don't pay that every time.
Yeah, exactly. And people really appreciate like the direct to camera, teaching style of webinars. That's what makes them a webinar.
Yep.
Separate from like what you're going to get if you buy a course. Like that might look a little different, but a webinar is like, we're just talking.
Yep. I mean, seeing the way that the market's going with webinars, I have a feeling that the just-in-time side of Evergreen will probably not be a thing too much quicker. I think it was able to sell well because, like you said, nobody was doing webinars. So if I jumped on an evergreen webinar, I haven't really been in a lot of webinars, so I don't really know the difference. I can't tell the difference between an evergreen, a non-evergreen. But as these webinars get popular again and everybody starts doing them, people are going to know really quickly whether it's a live recording or if it's live, or when somebody's asking questions but they're not ever really getting answered. So I think there'll probably be a move away from this faux live and more to this is a webinar that's been recorded that has really great content that I can watch whenever I want.
Yeah, let me bring up one little thing here. We just found out EverWebinar, like you have a video hosted on Vimeo and you pay for Vimeo, right? You think you're paying for storage, right? Well, there's actually another fee in Vimeo you're paying for, and that is bandwidth.
Ah,
And that has to do with how many people are viewing it. So we just had a client got called out by Vimeo because their evergreen webinar is so popular. It's an hour-long video, it's getting thousands of views a week. Their bandwidth usage is into the terabytes. And they're like, you have far exceeded your 1 terabyte monthly limit. But it's not something that's like shown. It's something that like somebody is trying to contact you and getting you to pay more for, or they're going to remove your account.
interesting.
Yeah.
I did not know they had. I wonder if that's really interesting. I wonder if YouTube's the same. I mean, I would think YouTube, with it being much, 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 much larger than Vimeo, might not have the same bandwidth caps, but I didn't even realize that. I mean, how would you find that out unless you're using terabytes of bandwidth?
Yeah.
Holy moly.
Yep. And speaking of YouTube, obviously another option people go with, why can't you just have a Zoom webinar, Zoom meeting like this? You and I, we're streaming live. What streaming service are we using?
Restream.io.
And that's got some pretty low costs, right?
Yeah, it's super affordable from what I remember when we first looked at it.
Now, let me ask you this. Can you set up a link ahead of time for the stream? Like if you wanted to stream to live to YouTube, could you do some sort of pre-generation to get a link where it will be streamed live?
Yes, but you would have to do that on YouTube side. So you can schedule live events inside YouTube.
Cool.
And as you schedule them, you can actually title them and have, if you have a lot of YouTube subscribers, as they jump on their YouTube, they'll see your video thumbnail, they'll see the name of your webinar, whatever it is you're doing, and then they'll say happening soon, tonight at 3 p.m. So it's kind of like like they get a preview of what's to come, and it actually pops up in their feeds every time they log in. So yeah, you can totally do that. And then you would just start a stream like we do here and restream into it, and it would kick off the stream inside your YouTube. So that's definitely a way you could do it. Recording that, yeah, you could record it too. The only thing I ever get, I get wishy-washy in is when you're jumping through multiple platforms, you're losing quality as you go because you have video compression, it has to push out via bandwidth. So if we're going through Zoom, through Restream to YouTube, and then recording on the back end of that, like those video and audio files are being compressed and expanded and compressed and expanded and compressed and expanded. So you'll lose a lot of quality. If you're looking to do like 4K video, it's best to always just, hey, let's record to a local computer and then upload into EverWebinar.
Yep. And I guess that brings us to like, what are you getting when you're doing a webinar? Why not just stream it live? And you can stream live, you can do a YouTube live, you can do a Facebook live. You're not going to have a landing page where you're taking in emails, because that's the best part. You want to get those emails, and you're not going to get enhanced tracking. So at the end of a Zoom webinar, you can download the report. You can see who showed up, how long they showed up, who showed up multiple times, when they left. You can get all sorts of feedback. You can look at if it's an evergreen webinar, you can look at your Vimeo results. You can see how long people are watching until. So you do lose a little bit. I would just suggest if you do try to use a little free option, like a YouTube live, make sure you're always still having them register for it because you want those emails. But you will end up losing out on knowing who actually attended.
And that was the unfortunate. I skipped right over that with EverWebinar. Is the metrics you get out of EverWebinar are detailed. Like I can see to the second when somebody drops off a video, and if I have a whole group doing that, I go, okay, maybe I should tweak my webinar because for some reason everybody leaves when I say this one thing.
Yeah, you can also tag them appropriately. So like if anybody who left before 40-minute mark, and the 40-minute mark is when the call to action was, you can like tag them separately and market them separately. But
Yep.
hey, I know you showed up, you left a little too early. Here's what we covered in the last 20 minutes. Instead of just targeting them with a general sales pitch where they're like, I don't know what this means. And then you can target people who didn't show up, being like, watch the replay. You can target people who did show up all the way till the end, being like, wasn't that great? You don't need to target them to watch the replay. You can just target them direct to offer.
Yep.
You get some pretty cool things.
A lot of cool functions.
So call out, you're looking to do some webinars, evergreen, non-evergreen. Ben and I have been doing some webinars. Well, that was fun. I like talking webinars. Those are some cool tools. I hope people can take some clear action based on those tools.
Yeah. Yep. Good luck with your webinars.
Yes. Well, thanks, Ben. We'll see you again in the future.
Yes, sir. See ya.